Steve Maddox here, Real Talk Japan. Thanks for watching. I wasn't planning on doing a video on this topic anytime soon, but I promised you real talk, and I also said that there's some hard truths that had to be recognized about living in Japan and about Japanese society, and that we were going to face those together, and I was going to talk about them, explain them, and hopefully help you understand them better. And so here we are. I had a series of really awful experiences on Saturday. It wasn't just one; it was a series. And when I explain it to you, you're going to think to yourself, "Well, it's not that bad." And I agree. Like on the face of it, it's really not that bad. But it's part of it just really hit me when it happened. I spent the last 2 days. It's Monday right now in Osaka, Monday afternoon, and this happened Saturday morning. So it's been 2 days. I'm still processing it, but I decided I needed to make this video because I need to put it on the record, I guess, what happened, and share my experience and share my sort of evaluation of it, and maybe that'll help me process it further. I don't know, maybe more for my benefit than from yours, I guess, in that sense. But anyway, so here's the thing. I mean, I use the term gaijined, being treated as a foreigner. Gaijin atsukai in Japanese is the way you would put it. Being gaijined. It happens all the time in Japan as a foreigner, and it's part of life in Japan as a foreigner. And even when I lived here back in the 90s, I mean, being gaijin was was pretty much a daily occurrence. Every time you get on the train, there'd be some kids sitting there, and they'd see you get in the train, and they go, "Gaijinda, you've been gaijined." Anytime you get treated differently because you're a foreigner, you're being gaijined, and it happens in subtle ways, it happens in small ways, it happens in big ways. I mean, if you're walking down the street and somebody looks at you, you're being gaijined. If you're walking down the street and somebody's staring at you, you're being gaijined. And the list goes on. I mean, you walk into a bar and some pretty girl walks up to you and wants to practice English. Well, you've been gaijined, and maybe you get to spend an hour talking to a pretty girl in a bar that you otherwise maybe wouldn't have done. So maybe that's not so bad, right? People staring at you in the street, not so bad. Maybe that's not such a big deal. People looking at you, and I say you're being gaijin because the Japanese don't do that to each other. Watch them. If you live your watch, just look around and just see how many times you see Japanese people making eye contact with each other when they walk past each other in social situations. Back out in the wild, like in society in general, the Japanese avoid each other. And I explained this in one of my videos, and the reason is because they don't want to engage in a senpai-kawaii relationship with anybody that they meet out on the street. They avoid it. And that's why the trains are so quiet. That's why the streets are so calm. That's why you don't see people running into each other, and that's why there's not a lot of crime in Japan. That's one of the reasons. It's because the Japanese spend all of their time outside the home and outside of work avoiding each other. I mean, you could see two people bump right into each other on the street, and they won't even acknowledge that it happened. Like they won't even like most of the time that I've seen it happen, they don't even nobody says sorry, because saying sorry lowers yourself. And ask the other person to lower themselves. So you started the dance, and they don't do that. So they'll just pretend that it didn't happen. So just watch that, right? So if they do look at you, right, and they look you in the eyes, you're being gaijined, because they don't do it to each other. They don't talk to each other. They don't talk to each other on the train, generally speaking, to strangers. They don't walk up to people and talk to them and just sort of start a conversation with them, generally speaking. Osaka's a little bit different because people tend to be more forward. But that's not typically the way the Japanese interact with each other. So if they do that to you, you're being gaijined. You apply for a job, and they say, well, and they won't say this to you directly, but it requires the job, the position involves managing some employees' work, and those employees would never accept being managed by a foreigner, so they won't hire you because you're a foreigner. You've been gaijined, and those things happen. Probably not a good thing. But at the same time, maybe there's a job out there for a sales position or a customer service position where there has to be a native English speaker, and you get the job because you're a foreigner and you're a native English speaker. You're a native English speaker. Well, that's probably a good thing, right? So being gaijin isn't necessarily always a bad thing, and it's not always a big thing, but it's a regular everyday part of life in Japan, and you have to accept that. And I have accepted it. I've made peace with it. And there's lots of other examples. I mean, I can promise you 10 out of 10 times I walk into a store with my wife And if I walk up and I say, and I, speak to the salesperson, whatever, and I ask a question, 10 times out of 10, 100% of the time, they'll speak to my wife. They won't answer me. They'll look to my wife and they'll answer to her. And why? Because I think I explained this in my last video that Japanese people feel uncomfortable around foreigners because, in large part, and everybody's different. Okay, I realize I'm generalizing, and not everybody's like this, but it's a very strong tendency, and I think part of it is because there's a general assumption among Japanese people, and again I'm generalizing, but I think it's a really, really widely held belief that foreigners simply can't understand Japanese. It's too difficult of a language. It's the most difficult language in the world, they say. It's extremely complex, and foreigners simply can't understand it. And if you can't understand the language, you can't do the cultural dance. And that's actually probably a fair assumption, to be honest. I mean, no matter how good your Japanese is, doing the cultural dance is it's foreign to me, and I don't do it. So in other words, I don't do it. And the reason why they talk to my wife is because they know she can do the dance. Right. So even if I'm speaking in Japanese, they're going to say, well, look, I'd rather talk to her because I know she's going to dance with me. Why take the risk that I can't dance? So if I go in by myself, they'll talk to me and I'll do my best, but I know how it is. I understand that. So I just don't put myself in those situations anymore. I just don't do that. My wife and I go into a store to do some shopping. I'm just like, you handle it, do the Japanese thing. Right. And if I have questions, then we'll talk together, and I just don't engage in it. And I've sort of now, I'm in a position now where I'm retired. I don't have to go outside if I don't want to. And so generally, I only go outside when I go to the gym and I go to the grocery store, which is what I'm about to talk about. So I've managed to situate my life where I just don't have to interact. I don't have to worry about those things because, people looking at you on the street, like, that's not that big of a deal. And it's kind of, it can be sort of tiresome, but, I just keep my head down and I just try not to notice it, trying to think about it. It's not a big deal. Right? That stuff doesn't really bother me so much anymore. Even though I know what's going on, right? I know I'm being gaijined, but whatever, not that big of a deal. So Saturday I go to the grocery store, and there's this event going on, which I've never seen before in Japan. I've been here now 12 years and 3.5 years before. I've never seen anything like this in a grocery store, where they had an event where they had a tuna, like, I don't know, like whatever, like maybe 3 feet long or something. That was it was a fresh tuna, they said, and they were filleting it and they were going to carve it up and sell it. Right, so it was like an event where customers could watch the fish guy cut the fish up, and there was about 20, 30 people kind of gathered around. And I'd never seen anything like this before, and I was like, wow, I've never seen this before. And so I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I see the sign on the wall that says what it is, and it's fresh tuna, and that they're gonna whatever, an event, and there's a guy out there sort of explaining what's going on. He's got a microphone, he's talking, and I'm kind of listening to what's going on. I'm kind of watching what everybody's doing. And like I said, about 20, 30 people kind of gathered around, customers, just regular customers. And they got the guy there behind the glass wall, and the glass is open, the window's open, and he's up there kind of cutting the thing up, whatever. And then beside him was a sort of a number of people who were taking the parts to be processed, and they were cutting it up into whatever portions to sell. So I'm standing there. I'm like, wow, like this is kind of cool, whatever. It's kind of something unique. I didn't expect to see today. And then over on the right side, over on the back, somebody comes out with a tray and hands a tray out, and it was a tray of samples, and I couldn't see it. From where I was probably about 20, 30 feet away, and I couldn't see the tray. And then I realized that it was, obviously I thought it was food they were selling, but it wasn't. It was actually samples. So people are walking up there and they're grabbing samples, but the people on the left side where I was couldn't get there, couldn't reach it. So just then this guy comes out wearing a white shirt, a dress shirt and pants. So in other words, not the fish processor's clothes, like not the apron and the smock or whatever you want to call it. None of that, protective gear, like none of that. Just wearing like a suit without a tie and a jacket. So maybe management, I'm thinking, right? I don't know that I've ever seen this guy before. Anyway, so he comes out and he's got a tray, and he comes like walking right towards where I'm standing. And there's a Japanese woman next to me here to my left, and there's several Japanese people like directly to my right, and the crowd is to my right. And so I'm in the crowd, but I'm in the back of the crowd. And so he walks past me, and then I look down and I see he's got a tray of samples, and that's when I realized that the other tray was samples. Like, oh, okay, everybody's getting samples. And to be honest, like I'm not really into seafood. I don't really eat it. My wife and I every now and again we'll get salmon steaks and we'll cook them here, fry them up or whatever. But that's sort of the extent of it. I don't really do. Every now and again we'll get like some sushi at the supermarket. But I'm not really a big fish fan, So it's like I wasn't really all that interested in. I wasn't going to buy the tuna, right? That was for sure. I absolutely wasn't going to buy it. And it was expensive. So based on what the guy was saying. But anyway, so I'm just kind of sitting there, kind of standing there, kind of watching this. And he walks by with the tray, and then he walks up to all the people with the tray. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, like I actually might even like to try that, because I don't know fish, but I'm like, I don't know, that's kind of unique. Maybe I'd like to try it. Maybe I don't. I don't know. I'm kind of like deciding like, do I really want a sample? I don't really know. Anyway, so he hands out the samples, and he still has about like 10 or so on his tray. And then he turns around, and he's right in front of me, like right in front of me. And then I look at him, and I'm about to say to him, like, oh, can I have one, right? And just as I'm about to say, can I have one, his eyes dart down, he looks right down to the ground, and then he just jumps to his right, like away from me, and then he runs to the back room. Like he ran away from me. And I was like, that guy just ran away from me. Like what's going on here? And then I look around and I realize that everybody around me, everybody has a sample. And they're all like actually like they're all like eating their samples and and they're actually trying to figure out what they can do with their cups, like where do we put these, whatever. And I'm standing there and I'm like, that guy just ran away from me. And I realized I was the only person in this whole group that didn't get a sample. And again, like it's not like that was a big deal to me. It wasn't like I'm like all of my dreams are crushed, like I'm about to catch the home run ball or whatever at the stadium and some kid grabs it from me, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like it was like something important to me. But and then I just kind of shrugged my shoulders and thought, okay, well, I've seen enough here. I kind of got the idea what this event's about, and I've got some shopping to do. So I go back over, pick up a couple more items, last couple things I wanted to buy, and then I start walking to the checkout. And I always go, and I've been going to this store for 9 years. We moved into this apartment like 9 years ago, and more than 9 years ago, and it's like a 10-minute walk from here, and it's between us and the train station. So when I was working and I'd get off the train that night, I would walk by there and I'd buy something. Sometimes I'd buy dinner or I just buy a drink or whatever, right? But and now it's again 10-minute walk away, and the gym is kind of over that way, and so it's kind of like I can kind of very easily get there from the gym on my way home, like buy a drink or something. Sometimes I buy food, sometimes I just buy a drink, whatever. But I've been going there almost every single day for 9 years. And every time I go in there, like I don't talk to people or anything, like I don't have like friends there or anything like that, but you see the same staff at the cash register, and I always go to the self checkout because I don't want to interact with the Japanese, right? I don't want to engage in any of that stuff. So but anyway, the people at the self checkout, it's always the same, whatever, 4 or 5 people, and they're always very nice to me. They're always just very polite, whatever. So it's never a bad experience. But I've been going there for 9 years, like almost every single day. And as I'm walking to the checkout, just hit me like I just got gaijined, and he just ran away from me, like, and I was like, why would he just run away from me like that? Like, it wasn't like I like all he had to do was just stop and just stand there. He didn't even say anything, but he ran away from me. And it just hurt. Like it was just like it just hurt. Like it just hit me hard. So I'm checking out my food and I'm starting to get real sad and real depressed. And I'm like, and the reason is this: it's not about the food, right? It's not about the sample. It's the power dynamic of Japan that just gets me every single time. Because the thing of it is that customers in Japan do not stand above the company, right? The company stands above the customers. The hierarchy of the company is the hierarchy of the company. There's nothing above the hierarchy of the company. So that manager's decision, if he was a manager, whoever he was, that employee's decision to not give me a sample is the company's decision, in effect. I don't stand above that. So I can complain all I want. I could have gone knocking on the door and I'd be like, give me a goddamn sample or whatever, I would have gotten a sample, probably. It's not like I would have refused, but it would have been really uncomfortable for them, and I would have been in the wrong. So, so I know that, and so it's like when you're in a situation like that, and somebody does something like that to you, you have to accept it. That's the power dynamic in Japan. That's what hierarchy is in Japan. The structure is the structure, the hierarchy is the hierarchy, the power is the power. And if you don't have the power, if they have power over you, and they do, they stand above me in the hierarchy because I'm just a customer. I have to accept the result. I can't say no. I can't complain. I mean, I can complain, but it's not going to go anywhere. They're not going to apologize. I mean, because it doesn't work like that in Japan. That's not how power works in Japan. And every time stuff like that happens to me, I just feel like it's like a part of my soul just disappears because it's so completely antithetical to the way we live in the West. Like you want your space, man, you fight for your space in the West. You want your thing, you go fight for it. You go get it. If you want to be bigger, stronger, more powerful, you want to fight for your rights, you fight for your rights. It's not like that in Japan. It's not like that. And I know that. So just a small slight like that, to me, it opens up the whole thing. And it's like, it reminds me of all the things that I've been through, and I've talked about, well, I haven't gotten into the details of what actually happened at the jewelry company or the construction company or the law firm. But let me tell you, it was bad. It was really, really awful. I mean, I had a series of really, really hard lessons in power, the power dynamic in Japan, and it was crushing, because it's so illogical, and it's so unfair, like this guy just ran away from me because he was afraid, I guess. I mean, I don't know, afraid of foreigners or just afraid of me, doesn't like my face. I mean, I don't know what it is, and the thing of it is, I don't know what it is, and I'm never gonna know what it is, right? Like I could walk down there right now and I could grab the guy and say, why'd you run away from me? And he won't even admit that it happened, right? Like that conversation could never happen. That would never happen. Most that would happen is he'd sort of like kind of half apologize or whatever and just walk away. So I'm never going to know. I'll never know. And that's also part of the power dynamic is that, you don't have the right to know why they do what they do. Right? If somebody makes a decision, somebody above you makes a decision, you as a lower status person, which I am as a customer, in this case, I don't have the right to know. And if they choose not to give me an explanation, then I don't get an explanation. I can't make them do it. There's no recourse, in other words. Unfair things happen in Japan, and they happen to the Japanese too, right? They happen to the Japanese too. But when they do, I mean, the Japanese, they just accept it, they minimize it, they pretend it didn't happen, and they go on with their lives as best they can. Right, for the most part. So it's not just me, right? It's not just me. I understand that, but that's why it hit me. And I'm like, but 9 years, 9 years, and the dude ran away from me. So anyway, so then I'm walking home, and I'm processing this, and I'm just getting kind of angry because it reminds me of, again, the power dynamic and just how powerless you can feel in Japan. And the Japanese the same way too. They experienced the same thing, right? But they're used to it, and they're Japanese, and so it's their world, right? They're used to it, and I've been having a hard time. I have a hard time with it. I just have a hard time with it. So I'm walking home, and I'm trying to sort of process it, and then I get home, and we live in a 13-story condo building with about like 100 units. We live on the 13th floor, 13th floor building, 13th floor, and we've been here for 9 years, like I said, and I know. Well, there's been a lot of turnover. So there's a lot of people here I don't know, or I've never met, or at least haven't met the whole family. Like maybe I've met the wife, but I haven't met the husband. Maybe I've seen the kids, but I don't know who the parents are, that kind of thing. And there's a lot of kids. And so getting on the elevator, and riding with the Japanese is sometimes, I mean, it's a social interaction, and you have to sort of like. Your neighbors, but really most people don't really interact. I don't think, anyway. Most people here pretty much know that I'm a lawyer. They know that I'm an attorney, and that's all related to this thing we're dealing with, the management board and all that. So I get a little bit more respect, I guess, and people are sort of kind and polite or whatever. But other people, they just ignore you. And I'm cool with it. I'm cool either way. But anyway. Get here, get to the lobby, and push the button for the elevator. And while the elevator's coming down, this guy comes up from my left, and he's this, I don't know, dude in his 40s or whatever, 30, 40s or whatever. I don't know. I've never seen this guy before. and Japanese guy, and he's got two kids, and his kids are like, I don't know, maybe like 6 years old and 4 years old, something like that, like little. And so they come around the corner towards where the where the from the entrance to where the elevators are. And I'm just standing there, just kind of looking at the elevators, and he's standing over here to my left. And I look over, and his kids take one look at me, and they run over to the wall, like 5 feet away from their father, and they're cowering against the wall like this. And they're looking at me kind of like this, trying to hide their face, and like this. They're terrified. And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, these kids are terrified, right? And I'm like, and I look at the father, and the father just kind of goes, sorry, like that, and kind of looks at the kids like, come on, it's not a big deal, whatever. He's trying to coax them away from the wall. They finally come away from the wall, and they're grabbing his legs, both of them, each grabbing a leg, and they're like looking at me, and they're cowering. And like one kid, the little kid, looked like he was gonna die. He was terrified. And I'm just standing there, like I'm wearing a t-shirt, shorts, baseball cap, got a bag of groceries. Like I'm not. There's nothing about me that's unusual, right? And by the way, I mean, just for the record, I'm like 5'10", maybe 5'10.5", about 165 pounds. I'm no monster, right? I'm no giant. But that does, but I am, even at that relatively small size, I'm still, fair to say, twice the size of a lot of Japanese guys. And that's not a humble brag. I'm just saying I understand that, right? So I understand that I'm bigger than most people that you're going to see walking around, but I'm not a big guy. And I don't pretend to be. I'm not, whatever. I know who I am in that sense. So anyway, the kids, so then the kids, they're terrified. And then another family comes up, and it's a woman and her husband and their like 10-year-old daughter or so, right? And the mother, I know, I see her all the time. I don't think I've ever seen the father before, maybe once or twice. And the daughter, I don't know if I've ever seen her before, honestly, which doesn't make sense because I've seen the mom all the time, and maybe she's just gotten older. I don't know. But anyway, so they're standing there. Elevator comes down, and I'm thinking to myself that the father is I'm getting on the elevator because I'm here first. And I'm thinking like the father's definitely not getting on the elevator with me because he knows the kids are terrified, right? So I'm thinking, all right, I'm just going to get on the elevator, and I'm going to go up to the 13th floor, and I'm going to go home. I'm going to try to forget about this whole thing. Anyway, so we get on the elevator. I get on the elevator, and then, to my surprise, the father drags his kids onto the elevator, and then the other family gets on, and the parents are like at the door, and they're facing the door, and the daughter is right behind them, and so the kids are sort of pushed close to me, and these kids looked terrified. Like I'm telling, like they were shaking. They're holding on to their dad's leg, and they're shaking, and they're on the 5th floor, so they're like 30 seconds from freedom, and they were shaking, right? And the father kind of apologized, and I said to him out loud, like, yeah, they look scared. And I don't know, and I don't know what else to say. I was like, I'm not like the last thing I want is for these kids to have an experience like that. They're just kids, and I don't want that for them. I don't want that for the manager at the store. Like, I don't want him to be afraid of me. I don't want that. Anyway, so we start moving up, and then the daughter turns around and she's looking at me and she's staring at me like from behind. She's facing the front, but she's staring at me the whole time. And she had this look on her face like she couldn't figure out what she was looking at. Like it was just like it wasn't like it certainly wasn't a smile. And it was like she just kind of like her eyebrows are kind of like this, and she was just like her head was kind of like this, and she's looking behind, but I was like, and she's just looking at me. She's like looking up and down and up and down. She's like 10 years old, so. And it's just like that look like you would have on your face if you, I don't know, picked something off the floor that you didn't know what it was. And you're kind of going like, what the heck is that? Where did that come from? What is that? Anyway, so then we get to the 5th floor and the kids run off the elevator. And the dad kind of looks back at me, kind of goes, sorry, whatever. And I'm just like, I just want this elevator ride over with, right? And then doors close. And then once again, daughter staring back at me, looking at me the whole time. And I just like, I don't know, what am I supposed to do with that, So I just kind of like look down, and I'm just kind of like, I'm trying to kind of say, like, okay, I'm not a danger to you, like I'm not threatening, I'm trying to sort of kind of half smile, Anyway, they get on the 10th floor or something, they get off the elevator and they're gone. And the parents actually turned around to me and they said goodbye or good afternoon or something or whatever. They actually greeted me, right? Which is a show of respect. And so I appreciated that, and I was like, whatever, have a nice day. So anyway, so that was Saturday, and so um, and I just felt so bad. I mean, like I don't the thing. See, this is the thing. I don't know what happened with these kids. I don't know kids. I don't know. I get different kinds of reaction from kids, and I try to avoid it. I try to be. Here's the thing. This is a thing that I learned when I lived in Japan in the 1990s, and it was maybe one of the most important lessons I've ever learned in my life, actually. And here's what it is. I realized that people perceive you, and maybe everybody knows that. I don't know, but I was whatever 24 years old, 25 years old, and I I finally kind of light went off my head. Like people perceive you, and they perceive you in ways that you would never expect. And so here's the thing. So I worked at a high school for about a year and a half, and I taught like 10th grade students, some boys, some girls, and some boys were in a higher level class, some boys were in a lower level class, and the girls were in like a foreign language class. These girls are all real smart, real hard workers. But anyway, every class that I had, the reaction that I got from the students was different. Some were laid back, some were like real tense, some were like they didn't care, like they wanted to fight me, like some were playful, some were whatever. And I thought that was kind of because I'd never been around high school kids since I'd been in high school, so this is all kind of like it's just sort of weird, kind of interacting with kids, and I found it interesting that everybody reacted differently. And then after that, I worked for a cram school company at Juku, where I taught, and I shouldn't I shouldn't say taught, because that's kind of what I was doing was so far removed from teaching. It's to say I was is an offense to the word and to the profession. So I had classes with kids from first grade up to ninth grade, and sometimes in the same day, where you'd see, like on a Saturday, you'd see from like 8:30 in the morning, first year students, and then like 6 o'clock in the evening, the ninth grade students. So throughout the entire day, I'd see these kids, and again, like their reaction based by year, like was always different, and the way they interacted with me was different. And and I realized like with littler kids, like if you went in there, if your goal is to get the kids to talk to you, or to engage in the lesson, to participate in the lesson, you've got to act in a certain way. You got to change your demeanor to get that result, because they perceive you. And so, in other words, the person that you have inside your brain that you think is you, right, exists in everybody else's head at the exact same time, but in a different way, right? They perceive you. So the person that they see is the person that they see. You are the person that they see. And you don't know how they perceive you, right? You don't know what's inside their head, but you know that there's something inside their head where they look at you and they see something that's part of a pattern in their life, right? Where they can order you in a way that they can understand. And that's based on their own life experience. And so, in your brain, you are the person they see. And you talking to them, like you don't know how they perceive you. If it's a close friend or somebody like maybe you have an idea how they perceive you. Maybe you don't. I don't know. It all depends. But what I realized was that I realized this is happening, right? Which was a good thing to know. And I realized that if I went into a class and I acted a certain way, I was if I wanted kids who were like playful and joyful and all that to engage in the lesson, I can't go in there and be like a hard ass. And be like, everybody sit down and shut up. Let's get to work. If I got a group of rowdy kids that won't pay attention, I got to be like that. So you've got to change your demeanor to get the result you want. And that's obviously, that's an obvious thing, right? That's not so hard to understand. But it was a great lesson to learn because I realized, so it forced me to think about how people perceive me. Right? Because I think about the range of reactions that I get from people on the extremes. I think, okay, why would I get that reaction where I haven't done anything? Like I literally just walked into the room and everybody's freaking out like tense. Okay, so what is it about me that might cause that instant reaction, right? And so I began thinking really hard about how people perceive me, and not because I want rewards or want people to like me or whatever, but just so that I could understand it. Because if I understand how people perceive me, then I can make up a strategy to change my demeanor to get the result that I want. And as a lawyer, as a litigator, that's an extremely important skill. And I would think about this before taking a deposition. I'd sort of size up, or in mediation, or talking to opposing counsel, or talking to a client, or talking to a judge, talking to a jury, whatever the situation was. I would think to myself, like, what demeanor do I need to have here to get the result I want? So you've got to cross-examine a witness, in a deposition or wherever, and they're going to lie, and so, but I've got like something in my hand. I know I've got something. I know I've got something that's just going to smack them across the head. That's going to prove they're lying. But if I come at them real hard, and I get in your face or whatever, they're going to be evasive. They're going to avoid. They won't give me the setup questions that I need, right? Because before I can use this document, I got to set it up. I've got to create the box, right? I've got to say, okay, you've got this fact and this fact and this fact and this fact, and because of all these facts, you put this in the box and you can't get out. That's the setup, right? So I got to do the setup, and if I attack during the setup, I'll get nothing. They won't agree to any of those things. So what I would do during the setup is I'd play dumb. I'd be like, I just had this thought. You said earlier something about how you and your boss only communicated by email, and I didn't understand why. Why would that be? Is that he's in India, you're in Canada? Like, why would you only communicate by email? And he goes, well, because the time change. Oh, there's a time change. What's the time difference between India and Canada? I mean, was it like 2 hours? And he's like, oh no, it's like 14 hours or 13 hours. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I see. Okay, so you needed to communicate by email because of the time change. Oh, I understand. So that's how you communicated, right? Oh, yeah. See, now I've got him. He's done. He thinks I'm just stupid. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. But that's a strategy, right? That's a strategy. So I did it as a lawyer, and I would change my demeanor to get the result that I wanted, or I tried to, right? I try my best to. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it didn't work. Worked more often than not, I'd say, probably, if I really thought about it, if I had time to think about it hard enough. Sometimes I didn't. So it was a very important lesson. And so the problem, this is the thing, and I'll leave on this. The problem with what happened with these kids is I can't change that. And with the manager, I can't change that. There's nothing about what I did or tried to do that caused that result. I simply walked in the store. I'm simply standing there waiting for the elevator, right? And they reacted that way. And I can't change that. I can't fix that. And it's true about, like, well, I do my best, in every interaction in Japan to just sort of minimize myself so I don't have to interact. But I can't fix that, right? There's nothing that I can do to prevent that from happening again, right? Like, I see those kids again, I don't know how they're going to react, right? So there's nothing I can do to solve that problem. I can't solve that problem. And I don't know what the next problem is going to be, right? And that's the hard part, right? Is like, if I could predict it, right? Like, if I knew how that kid was going to act, maybe I don't know. I wouldn't have been waiting for the elevator, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, so that's the problem. When you're going to be gaijined in Japan, it's going to happen. You can't prevent it, not entirely. You can try as hard as you can to try to integrate or whatever, but it's still going to happen to you, and it's going to happen to you in ways that you don't expect, that you can't control, and that you can't, by and large, you can't remedy. So so life's hard. But anyway, that's real talk, and I'll leave it there. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again.